The day I found my possessions stuffed into garbage bags on my mother's front lawn was the same day I closed my first $1 million deal. "Deadbeats don't live under my roof," she'd texted me that morning. Little did she know that while I was sleeping on her couch, I had built an empire that would change both our lives forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I never anticipated returning to my childhood home at 33, not after graduating with honors from Princeton, climbing the corporate ladder at Vanguard Investments, and purchasing my sleek downtown condo with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city skyline. But life has a peculiar way of dismantling even the most meticulously constructed plans, often when we least expect it. My name is Olivia Winters. 6 months ago, I was Senior Investment Director at Vanguard, managing a portfolio worth $2.3 billion for high-net-worth clients across the Eastern Seaboard. My personal financial portfolio was diversified and robust, my professional reputation impeccable, and my future trajectory clearly mapped to partnership within 2 years. I had even begun preliminary discussions with the executive committee about launching an innovative sustainable investment division that aligned with my personal passion for environmental impact. The morning everything changed began like any other Tuesday. I arrived at the office at 6:45 a.m., reviewed overnight market movements in Asian markets, and prepared for my 8:30 client call with the Chen family, who had recently expressed interest in reallocating a significant portion of their portfolio toward emerging markets. As I finished my third espresso of the morning, my assistant James knocked on my door with an unusual expression of concern. "The executive team would like to see you in the boardroom immediately," he said, his typically confident demeanor noticeably subdued. I quickly reviewed my mental calendar, confirming no executive meeting had been scheduled. "Did they mention what this is regarding?" James shook his head. "HR is there as well." Those 5 words sent a slight chill through me. In 13 years at Vanguard, I'd never been summoned to an unscheduled meeting with both executive leadership and human resources present. I straightened my charcoal pinstripe suit, saved the presentation I'd been working on, and made my way to the boardroom on the 32nd floor. The atmosphere inside was palpably tense. CEO Richard Harrington sat at the head of the table, flanked by Diane Myers from Legal and Trevor Phillips from Human Resources. 3 other executive committee members occupied seats along the mahogany table that had witnessed countless strategic decisions, none of which, I suspected, were as uncomfortable as whatever was about to transpire. "Olivia, please take a seat." Richard gestured to a chair directly across from him, his typically warm demeanor replaced by a clinical professionalism that immediately heightened my concern. "We've received some troubling information," he continued once I was seated. "An internal audit has flagged unusual patterns in several client accounts under your management." The accusation hung in the air for a moment before Trevor slid a folder across the table containing spreadsheets highlighting transactions across multiple client accounts. As I scanned the documents, my initial confusion transformed into horrified understanding. Someone had executed unauthorized trades across 17 major client portfolios, diverting fractional percentages into offshore accounts. "These transactions bear your digital signature and security clearance," Diane stated, her tone measured but definitive. "That's impossible," I responded, my voice steadier than I felt. "I would never." "The evidence is quite clear," Richard interrupted. "The transactions originated from your terminal during hours you were logged in. The authentication protocols show no signs of compromise." For the next hour, I attempted to defend myself against allegations that seemed increasingly indefensible. The evidence presented was methodically damning, a trail of transactions that indeed traced back to my credentials, executed with a sophistication that suggested intimate knowledge of Vanguard's internal security measures. By meeting's end, my access to all company systems had been revoked, my office was being packed into boxes by security personnel, and my 13-year career had imploded in spectacular fashion. We've notified the relevant regulatory authorities, Richard informed me as the meeting concluded. Given the circumstances, immediate termination is the only option. We'll be pressing charges for fraud and breach of fiduciary duty. The elevator ride to the lobby passed in a surreal haze. Security escorted me through the marble atrium where I had confidently strode thousands of times before. Colleagues watched with expressions ranging from shock to pity to poorly concealed curiosity. By noon, I had been transformed from respected investment director to alleged financial criminal, all without understanding how or why. The subsequent weeks unfolded with relentless efficiency. My professional licenses were suspended pending investigation. Former colleagues stopped returning calls and messages. Recruitment agencies politely declined to represent me. The financial media, always hungry for scandal, published articles with headlines like Vanguard Director Implicated in Client Fund Misappropriation and Rising Star Falls, the Olivia Winters Case. My attorney, Martin Goldstein, a former prosecutor specializing in white-collar defense, reviewed the evidence and delivered his assessment with brutal honesty in his downtown office overlooking the courthouse where I would likely stand trial. Someone has gone to extraordinary lengths to frame you, he concluded after our third meeting. The technical sophistication suggests inside knowledge of both Vanguard systems and your specific access patterns. Can we prove that? I asked. Clutching a rapidly cooling cup of coffee, Martin's expression revealed the answer before he spoke. Eventually, perhaps. Digital forensics takes time, often months. The problem is that the evidence against you is both circumstantial and compelling. Whoever did this understood exactly how to create a trail that points exclusively to you. As legal expenses mounted and my savings dwindled, financial reality imposed itself with mathematical certainty. My mortgage payment on the downtown condo became untenable without income. The legal retainer for Martin absorbed what remained of my emergency fund. Credit card companies began sending increasingly urgent notifications about missed payments. 3 months after my termination, I sold my condo at a significant loss in a desperate attempt to generate liquidity. The housing market's downturn couldn't have been more poorly timed, forcing me to accept an offer 22% below market value. After satisfying the mortgage and outstanding property taxes, the proceeds were barely sufficient to cover 4 more months of legal representation. With professional reinstatement months away at best and financial reserves rapidly depleting, I confronted the unthinkable, asking for help. My father had passed away 5 years earlier after a prolonged battle with pancreatic cancer, leaving my mother, Catherine Winters, as my only immediate family. Our relationship had always been complicated, characterized by fundamental differences in perspective, priorities, and communication styles. My mother had never understood my career choices or lifestyle. A high school English teacher for 37 years in our suburban hometown of Mapleton, she valued stability and community rootedness above all else. My decision to pursue finance rather than education had been our first significant point of contention. My subsequent move to the city, 60 miles from Mapleton, had been interpreted not as professional advancement, but as personal rejection. Our interactions over recent years had settled into a predictable pattern of holiday visits and occasional Sunday phone calls, during which she inquired about my personal life with thinly veiled disappointment that it didn't include a husband or children. She had never visited my downtown condo, describing the city as overpriced, overcrowded, and overrated whenever the possibility arose. Calling her from the empty living room of my former condo, surrounded by packed boxes and the emotional debris of my former life, ranks among the most difficult moments of that period. "Mom," I began after our usual preliminary exchanges, "I'm in a complicated situation and could use some temporary help." "What kind of help?" Her tone carried immediate suspicion, as though anticipating an unreasonable request. Over the next 20 minutes, I provided a carefully edited summary of recent events, professional difficulties, temporary financial constraints, need for short-term housing while resolving these challenges. I deliberately omitted specifics about criminal allegations, focusing instead on a simplified narrative of corporate restructuring and unexpected job loss. Her silence after I finished speaking extended uncomfortably before she responded. "You've always been so independent, telling me how successful you were in the city. Now you're saying you have nothing?" "Not nothing," I clarified. "Just temporary challenges while I sort through some professional complications. And you want to move back home." The statement carried neither warmth nor hostility, just a flat acknowledgement of facts. Just for a few months while I get things stabilized. I'd contribute to household expenses once I secure new employment. Another lengthy pause followed before she answered. "The guest room has been converted to my crafting space. The sofa in the living room pulls out. You can use that until you get yourself situated." Relief mingled with resignation as I thanked her. The arrangement was far from ideal, but significantly preferable to the alternatives. 3 days later, I arrived at my childhood home in Mapleton, with my remaining possessions packed into my leased BMW, another expense I could no longer justify, but couldn't yet eliminate without substantial early termination penalties. The two-story Colonial on Oak Ridge Drive looked smaller than I remembered, its white clapboard exterior showing signs of deferred maintenance that my professional eye couldn't help but notice. The front garden, once my father's pride, had been simplified to low-maintenance shrubs and sporadic perennials that required minimal attention. My mother greeted me with an awkward half-embrace before leading me through the familiar entryway, into the living room that would become my temporary accommodation. The navy blue sofa I remembered from childhood had been replaced by a floral-patterned pull-out that dominated the room, flanked by outdated side tables holding collections of porcelain figurines. "Bathroom schedule is the same as always," she informed me as though I had been absent for weeks rather than years. "I shower at 6:15 a.m. Dinner is at 5:30 p.m. I go to bed by 9:10 p.m. and expect reasonable quiet after that." The regimented parameters of her daily routine hadn't changed, but everything else had. I was no longer the ambitious daughter departing for Princeton with scholarships and aspirations. I was an unemployed professional with legal troubles, sleeping on her mother's sofa bed. My life's trajectory fundamentally altered. The initial adjustment proved more challenging than anticipated. The physical discomfort of the thin mattress was manageable. Far more difficult was the psychological recalibration required. Having lived independently since college, accustomed to spacious accommodations, personal privacy, and absolute autonomy over my schedule, the constraints of my mother's household felt suffocating. Her morning routine included Fox News at maximum volume while preparing breakfast, regardless of whether I was trying to sleep after spending late nights researching my case and applying for positions that might consider someone under investigation. Her commentary on current events inevitably included pointed references to people who think they're too smart for their own good, or fancy degrees that don't teach common sense. By the second week, it became evident that her acceptance of my presence didn't extend to genuine sympathy for my circumstances. Each morning featured some variation of subtle commentary about my situation. Elizabeth's daughter lost her job. "Last year," she mentioned one Tuesday while preparing her invariable breakfast of toast and black coffee, "she immediately took a position at the local insurance office. Didn't waste time feeling sorry for herself." "I'm not feeling sorry for myself," I responded, attempting to maintain an even tone. "I'm strategically addressing complicated professional circumstances." My mother's dismissive expression conveyed her assessment of this explanation. "Seems to me you're overthinking instead of doing. That's always been your problem." These exchanges became routine, each reinforcing the fundamental disconnect between our perspectives. Where I saw systematic problem-solving and strategic patience, she perceived procrastination and excuses. The complex legal and professional challenges I faced were, in her assessment, unnecessary complications resulting from poor choices. As weeks extended into months, the strain intensified. Despite submitting over 100 job applications, my circumstances made employment virtually impossible. Companies that initially expressed interest withdrew after discovering the pending investigation. Even positions significantly below my qualifications remained inaccessible due to routine background checks. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. My financial situation deteriorated accordingly. The BMW was returned, replaced by occasional use of my mother's 10-year-old Camry when she didn't need it. My designer wardrobe, once a professional necessity, hung unused in the hall closet, increasingly irrelevant to my new reality. Credit card accounts entered collections as my focus, necessarily shifted to basic necessities. Throughout this period, Martin continued working on my case, though at a reduced capacity given my financial constraints. 4 months into the investigation, he called with the first positive development. The forensic team has identified anomalies in the digital trail, he explained during our call, which I took from the backyard to avoid my mother's inevitable commentary. The transactions allegedly executed from your terminal show microsecond timing inconsistencies that suggest credential spoofing rather than legitimate access. That's good news, right? I asked, permitting myself cautious optimism. It's a start, Martin acknowledged, but we need more. The prosecutor will argue these are system logging irregularities, not evidence of fraud. We need to identify who actually executed these transactions and how they accessed your credentials. This technical breakthrough, while encouraging, did little to improve my immediate circumstances. My mother's patience, already limited, showed increasing signs of exhaustion. Her initial commentary evolved into more direct expressions of frustration. When exactly do you plan to contribute financially to this household? She asked one evening as I assembled a portfolio for a potential consulting opportunity. It's been nearly 5 months, Olivia. I'm pursuing every possible opportunity, I responded, gesturing to the materials spread across the dining table. The situation is complicated by factors beyond my control. Everything is always complicated with you, she sighed. Your father and I raised you to be resourceful. There's always work available if you're willing to set aside your pride. The suggestion that my unemployment stemmed from pride, rather than legitimate legal and professional barriers, triggered frustration I struggled to contain. This isn't about pride. My licenses are suspended pending investigation. I'm legally restricted from performing the work I'm qualified for, and overqualified for most other positions. Excuses, she pronounced with finality. When I was your age, I was teaching full-time, raising you, maintaining this house, and caring for your grandparents. I didn't have time for complications. These exchanges gradually eroded whatever tenuous understanding had initially facilitated our cohabitation. The fundamental disconnect widened, with my mother increasingly portraying my situation as a moral failure rather than a professional setback. In her narrative, my circumstances resulted not from external forces, but from character deficiencies, pride, impracticality, and poor judgment. 6 months into this arrangement, an unexpected opportunity emerged from the professional wilderness. An email arrived from Eliza Kwan, a former client who had left Vanguard 2 years earlier to launch Horizon Impact Partners, a boutique investment firm specializing in sustainable and socially responsible investment strategies. I had managed her family's considerable portfolio for 5 years before her departure, developing a relationship based on mutual respect and shared values regarding environmental sustainability. I've been following your situation, her message began. The allegations don't align with the professional I knew. If you're available, I'd like to discuss a potential opportunity. Our subsequent video call revealed a proposition both unexpected and potentially transformative. Eliza was developing a proprietary investment algorithm focused on identifying undervalued companies with robust environmental practices. Her technical team had created the framework, but she needed someone with comprehensive investment knowledge to refine the parameters and validate the underlying assumptions. This would be consulting work, completely remote, she explained. Given your current legal situation, we'd need to structure it carefully as algorithm validation rather than investment advice, since your licenses are suspended. The compensation would be project-based rather than salary. The proposal offered exactly what I most desperately needed: legitimate income using my expertise without violating regulatory restrictions, with the additional benefit of remote work that wouldn't require explanation to my increasingly judgmental mother. "There's something else," Eliza added before concluding our call. "I never believed you were responsible for those transactions. My family's accounts were among those allegedly compromised, and the pattern doesn't match how you managed our investments. I've communicated this to the investigators, for whatever that's worth." This vote of confidence, combined with the consulting opportunity, triggered the first genuine optimism I'd experienced in months. I spent the following week developing a comprehensive proposal for Eliza's project, outlining methodologies for quantifying environmental practices across different sectors and correlating these metrics with financial performance indicators. The work rekindled intellectual engagement that had been suppressed by survival concerns. For hours each day, I immersed myself in research, financial modeling, and algorithm refinement, experiencing professional fulfillment that had been notably absent since my termination. My mother, observing my renewed focus without understanding its nature, interpreted my extended computer sessions as further evidence of impractical distraction. "Online games won't pay the bills," she commented one afternoon, glancing disapprovingly at my screen filled with complex correlation matrices comparing carbon reduction initiatives with 5-year profit trajectories. "It's professional research," I responded without elaboration, having learned that detailed explanations only prolonged uncomfortable exchanges. "Research doesn't put food on the table," she countered before leaving me to my apparently frivolous pursuits. I chose not to share details about Eliza's project, partly because explaining its complexity seemed futile given our communication patterns, but primarily because this opportunity represented something I needed to protect, a fragile ember of professional identity that required shielding from my mother's persistent skepticism. 3 weeks into the project, Eliza arranged a video conference to review my preliminary findings with her technical team. The 4-hour session represented the most engaged professional discussion I'd participated in since my termination, with team members building upon my analysis to refine their algorithm parameters. By session's end, Eliza appeared genuinely impressed. "This exceeds my expectations," she acknowledged. "Your insights about sectoral variances in environmental metrics have already improved our prediction accuracy by 17%. I'd like to extend the consulting arrangement with expanded scope." The revised proposal increased both my responsibilities and compensation, providing sufficient income to begin addressing my most pressing financial obligations. More significantly, it established a professional pathway that circumvented the restrictions imposed by my ongoing legal situation. That evening, I received an email notification that the first consulting payment had been deposited in my account. The amount, while modest compared to my former salary, represented something far more valuable than its nominal figure: tangible evidence that professional rehabilitation remained possible despite overwhelming setbacks. For the first time since moving into my mother's home, I initiated a conversation over dinner that wasn't defensive or explanatory. "I've secured some consulting work," I stated simply as we ate the lasagna she had prepared. "It's remote, but pays reasonably well. I can start contributing to household expenses next week." Her expression registered surprise, followed by measured approval. "What kind of consulting?" "Financial analysis for a sustainable investment firm," I responded, deliberately keeping details minimal to avoid inevitable criticism. Well, that's something at least, she acknowledged, her tone suggesting the development was positive but insufficient for full redemption. Maybe now you can start thinking about a real job once you're back on your feet. The comment crystallized, an essential truth I had been gradually recognizing. My mother would never understand or validate my professional identity. In her worldview, financial analysis represented abstract complexity rather than tangible contribution. No achievement within that domain would ever translate to legitimate accomplishment in her assessment. This recognition, rather than discouraging me, provided unexpected clarity. I had been seeking validation from someone fundamentally incapable of providing it, not through malice but through irreconcilable perspective. My mother's assessment of my choices and circumstances wasn't the definitive judgment I had unconsciously treated it as, but simply one perspective constrained by her own experiences and values. With this realization came a subtle but profound shift in my approach to our cohabitation. I stopped explaining my choices or defending my circumstances, instead focusing energy on rebuilding my professional foundation through Eliza's project. Each day, I worked diligently on algorithm refinement, gradually expanding my contributions from technical validation to strategic analysis of potential investment targets. 2 months into this arrangement, Martin called with significant developments, in my case. The digital forensics team had identified the source of the fraudulent transactions. They've traced the access to internal systems at Vanguard, he explained, his typically measured tone carrying unusual animation. Specifically, to terminals accessed by the cybersecurity team during system maintenance 2 weeks before the transactions occurred. They planted backdoor access that activated later, using your credentials. Who? I asked, the question that had haunted me for months finally approaching resolution. Andrew Pearson, Martin replied, naming Vanguard's Deputy Chief of Information, Security. The same executive who initially discovered the suspicious transactions and led the internal investigation against you. The revelation triggered a complex emotional response. Vindication mingled with renewed anger at how thoroughly my reputation had been damaged by deliberate malfeasance. Further investigation revealed Pearson's motive. He had accumulated substantial gambling debts to offshore entities and needed both funds and a scapegoat to avoid exposure. The prosecutor is dropping all charges against you, Martin confirmed. Vanguard's legal team has already reached out about potential settlement discussions regarding wrongful termination and reputational damage. This legal vindication coincided with an unexpected development in my consulting work. Eliza's algorithm, refined through our collaboration, had identified a small environmental remediation company whose proprietary technology showed extraordinary promise but remained undervalued due to limited market awareness. After thorough analysis, Horizon Impact Partners made a significant investment, followed by strategic introductions that helped secure implementation contracts for the technology. When the company's quarterly results revealed 340% revenue growth due to these contracts, their stock price surged accordingly. Horizon's early position generated substantial returns, with my algorithm refinements directly contributing to the identification of this opportunity. Your insight was instrumental in this success, Eliza acknowledged during our weekly review call. I'd like to discuss a more permanent arrangement once your legal situation is fully resolved. That evening, I received an email notification of a performance bonus deposit that exceeded my previous annual salary at Vanguard. The validation, both professional and financial, arrived precisely when its impact could be most transformative. After 8 months of uncertainty, financial precarity, and professional isolation, tangible evidence of my capabilities had materialized in unmistakable form. I sat on the edge of the uncomfortable sofa bed that night, contemplating how to navigate this altered landscape. The settlement discussions with Vanguard would likely result in substantial compensation for wrongful termination and reputational damage. The consulting arrangement with Horizon offered a pathway to rebuilt professional identity with colleagues who valued my expertise. Financial independence, so recently unattainable, had suddenly re-emerged as an immediate possibility rather than distant aspiration. As I considered these developments, my mother entered the living room in her customary evening routine, collecting coffee cups and straightening magazines before retiring. Her glance toward my laptop screen, displaying complex financial projections for Horizon's next potential investment target, carried the familiar mix of incomprehension and mild disapproval. "Still playing with your computer games?" she asked, the question embodying months of fundamental misunderstanding. For once, I didn't feel compelled to correct her misconception or justify my activities. Her assessment, I realized, was entirely irrelevant to the reality of what I had built and continued to build despite extraordinary obstacles. In that moment of clarity, I recognized that true independence, professional, financial, and psychological, required not just external resources, but internal liberation from the need for validation from those incapable of providing it. Little did I know that this realization would be tested the very next morning in ways that would permanently transform both our relationship and my understanding of resilience. The developments of the following day would reveal exactly how divergent our perspectives remained, and the extraordinary lengths to which I would need to go to protect what I had so painstakingly rebuilt from the ashes of catastrophic setback. After 15 minutes of methodical searching through garbage bags, I located my laptop wedged between sweaters and professional documents in the fourth container. The computer appeared undamaged despite careless handling, though several folders containing settlement documentation had been bent and creased by surrounding items. The discovery of these essential materials provided temporary relief despite the continuing indignity of searching through garbage bags for carefully organized possessions. As I extracted the laptop and documentation, I noticed my mother had departed from the doorway, leaving Jennifer as sole witness to this degrading process. My sister remained, her expression conveying complicated mix of discomfort and hesitant solidarity without direct intervention. "I'm sorry about this," she offered quietly. "I had no idea she was going to pack your things like this." The apology, while seemingly genuine, highlighted Jennifer's persistent pattern throughout our relationship: recognition of inappropriate behavior without meaningful intervention or boundary establishment with our mother. Throughout adulthood, she had consistently acknowledged unfair treatment while remaining primary beneficiary of the differential standards applied to our respective situations. "I need a functioning workspace for 3 more days," I stated practically, focusing on immediate logistics rather than emotional implications. The sofa transitioning to Jennifer's space immediately creates significant professional complications during critical transition period. Jennifer nodded with apparent understanding. "You can use Mom's crafting table in the guest room tonight if that helps. She's watching her shows now and probably won't notice." The suggestion, while well-intentioned, highlighted the dysfunctional dynamics that had shaped our family relationships throughout adulthood. Even minimal professional accommodation required circumventing our mother's authority, rather than expecting reasonable consideration of legitimate needs. Temporary use of space in a household where I had resided for 8 months now required secret permission from my sister rather than rightful access. "Thank you," I acknowledged, gathering essential materials before proceeding upstairs to the former guest room that had been converted to my mother's crafting space years earlier. The room contained a sturdy table currently covered with scrapbooking supplies and fabric remnants, with insufficient space for computer setup without significant rearrangement. After carefully relocating craft materials to create necessary workspace, I established temporary functionality sufficient for the evening's professional obligations. Horizon's executive team had scheduled a planning session regarding integration of my investment algorithm into their existing portfolio assessment framework. Critical. Preparation requiring thorough documentation review before implementation. The 2-hour video conference proceeded productively despite the improvised workspace. with Horizon's technical team demonstrating sophisticated understanding of environmental impact assessment methodologies I had developed during my consulting arrangement. The professional engagement provided welcome contrast to the demeaning circumstances that had immediately preceded it, reinforcing the divergent realities I was simultaneously navigating during this transition period. As the call concluded around 9:30 p.m., I became aware of movement in the hallway outside the craft room. My mother stood in the doorway, her expression registering surprise followed by unmistakable anger at finding me using the space without explicit permission. "What are you doing in here?" she demanded, gesturing toward the rearranged craft supplies. "These are organized for my projects." "I needed workspace for an important professional meeting," I explained calmly. "Jennifer suggested this might be available temporarily since the living room has been reconfigured." My mother's expression hardened at this explanation. "Jennifer has no authority to offer my private spaces without permission. Your constant meetings and computer work have been disrupting this household for months. This inappropriate invasion of my personal space simply confirms your continued selfishness despite improved circumstances." The characterization of necessary. Professional obligations as disruptive selfishness exemplified her persistent framing of my career as inconvenient preference rather than legitimate priority. Throughout my residence, I had deliberately confined professional activities to designated spaces specifically to minimize household disruption, consideration demonstrably unreciprocated in her unilateral disposal of my belongings. "I apologize for the misunderstanding," I responded neutrally, beginning to restore craft supplies to their original positions. "I'll find alternative arrangements for remaining work requirements until Wednesday." "See that you do," she replied sharply. "Jennifer needs supportive environment during her transition, not continuous disruption from your excessive work habits." The reference to excessive work habits, framing professional dedication as pathological rather than appropriately ambitious, reinforced her fundamental misalignment with my values regarding achievement and purpose. Throughout my career, necessary, professional commitment had been consistently characterized as unhealthy obsession rather than legitimate prioritization aligned with meaningful goals. After restoring craft supplies to approximate original arrangement, I gathered essential materials and proceeded downstairs to locate alternative workspace for remaining obligations. The dining room table offered potential functionality but remained visible from the living room where my mother had resumed watching television programs at considerable volume. Jennifer had already prepared the sofa as sleeping accommodation, with bedding arranged for immediate use. Her easel occupied the space previously used for my laptop workspace, while various art supplies covered the side table that had contained my professional materials during preceding months. "Mom seemed upset," she observed quietly as I passed, through toward the dining room. I shouldn't have suggested using her craft room without asking. "It's fine," I assured her, prioritizing de-escalation over legitimate frustration. "I'll manage with alternative arrangements until Wednesday." Jennifer's expression conveyed genuine sympathy despite her role as beneficiary of the disruption. "This is awkward timing with everything. I can still try to find other options if this is too complicated." Before responding, I considered the dynamics underlying this situation. Jennifer's pattern throughout adulthood had consistently involved initial expressions of consideration, followed by ultimate acceptance of advantages created through unequal treatment. Her genuine discomfort with obvious inequity rarely translated to meaningful boundary establishment or declined benefits resulting from differential standards. "Wednesday is manageable," I assured her, recognizing further discussion would likely prove unproductive given established patterns. "The condominium will provide appropriate space for remaining transition requirements. Setting up temporary workspace at the dining room table, I completed essential documentation for the following day's settlement finalization meeting, while my mother's television programs provided constant background noise at volumes specifically calibrated to establish dominance over the shared space. The passive-aggressive communication, establishing disruptive presence while maintaining plausible deniability regarding intent, represented familiar pattern from childhood instances when academic work had been similarly undermined. After completing necessary preparations, I contemplated sleeping arrangements given the sofa's conversion to Jennifer's accommodation. The most logical option, sleeping in my car overnight, offered independence from increasingly hostile household dynamics while presenting obvious practical challenges regarding comfort and rest quality before important professional obligations. As I considered options, Jennifer approached the dining table with unexpected proposition. "You can have the sofa tonight if you need it. I can sleep on the floor or something. This feels wrong with everything you've been through." The offer, while seemingly generous, highlighted her pattern of symbolic rather than substantive solidarity. Throughout our relationship, Jennifer had consistently offered token gestures of support that maintained appearance of fairness without meaningful sacrifice of advantages gained through differential treatment. The proposed floor accommodation represented theatrical rather than practical solution given my mother's certain objection to any arrangement that prioritized my needs over Jennifer's comfort. "I appreciate the offer, but I've made alternative arrangements," I responded. The statement technically accurate, though the arrangements remained undefined. "The situation is temporary, regardless." Returning to the garage, I retrieved clothing, suitable for overnight accommodation in my car, along with professional attire for the following day's settlement finalization meeting. The Mercedes sedan I had leased during previous professional stability offered limited but functional sleeping space with seats reclined to approximate flat surface. The arrangement, while obviously suboptimal, provided independence from increasingly hostile household dynamics during this critical transition period. As midnight approached, I quietly departed the house toward my car parked along the street, rather than driveway to minimize visibility from household windows. The early summer evening provided reasonable temperature for improvised sleeping arrangement, despite obvious physical limitations. More significant than physical discomfort was the psychological impact of this circumstance, reduced to sleeping in my vehicle despite imminent professional restoration and financial stability, because familial dynamics rendered rightful accommodation within the household untenable. Morning arrived with predictable physical discomfort from improvised sleeping arrangements, though the prospect of settlement finalization provided sufficient motivation to overcome temporary limitations. Using the local gym membership I had maintained despite financial constraints, I accessed shower facilities and prepared for the day's critical obligations with professional appearance that belied actual circumstances. The settlement finalization meeting with Martin proceeded smoothly at his downtown office, with documentation confirming the $2.4 million compensation package and formal reinstatement of professional licenses effective immediately. The official completion of this process represented comprehensive vindication after 8 months of extraordinary challenge, formal acknowledgement of wrongful accusation, and appropriate restoration of professional standing. "Congratulations," Martin offered sincerely as we concluded the signing process. "Not many professionals could have navigated these circumstances with your resilience. This outcome represents not just legal vindication, but personal triumph over extraordinary adversity." The acknowledgement, genuine recognition of both the challenges endured and strength demonstrated throughout the ordeal, provided meaningful validation absent from family responses to my professional restoration. Throughout the crisis and subsequent vindication, my mother had consistently characterized my circumstances as unfortunate situation rather than catastrophic injustice, requiring extraordinary resilience to overcome. Following the settlement formalization, I proceeded directly to the condominium leasing office to determine whether expedited occupancy might be possible given household circumstances. The property manager, after reviewing my completed documentation and confirming the substantial security deposit already processed, offered unexpected accommodation. "The unit has been cleaned and inspected already," she explained. "While official lease begins Wednesday, you're welcome to move in immediately if that would be helpful. We simply need to complete final paperwork this afternoon." This unexpected flexibility provided immediate solution to increasingly untenable household situation. The condominium's immediate availability would enable complete separation from toxic dynamics without requiring additional improvised accommodations during critical professional transition period. After completing necessary documentation and receiving access credentials, I proceeded directly to the new property to assess immediate functionality. The condominium exceeded expectations established during previous viewing, with recently renovated interior featuring contemporary design elements aligned with personal aesthetic preferences. Floor-to-ceiling windows provided abundant natural light throughout the open-concept living area, while the second bedroom offered perfect configuration for home office space required during transition to Horizon's offices. After confirming all essential utilities functioned properly, I proceeded to nearest home goods retailer to acquire immediate necessities: air mattress for temporary sleeping accommodation, basic kitchenware for essential functions, and minimal bathroom supplies until proper furnishings could be arranged following settlement fund processing. These purchases, while modest compared to eventual requirements, provided sufficient functionality for immediate occupancy. The afternoon proceeded with installation of temporary necessities in the condominium, transforming empty space into minimally functional living environment despite obvious limitations. The air mattress, while clearly temporary, provided significant improvement over previous night's improvised car accommodation, while basic kitchenware enabled essential meal preparation without restaurant dependence. By evening, the condominium offered sufficient functionality to support immediate occupancy, despite obvious temporary compromises. The space represented not merely physical accommodation, but profound psychological transition, environment-aligned, with personal values and professional requirements without constant negotiation of hostile dynamics shaped by fundamental misalignment of priorities. With temporary accommodations established, I returned reluctantly to my mother's house to retrieve essential belongings still contained within garbage bags in the garage. The prospect of confrontation during this process created apprehension, though practical necessity overrode emotional reluctance given the critical nature of materials required for continued professional transition. Arriving at the house, I discovered only Jennifer's car in the driveway, suggesting my mother remained absent on her usual Wednesday afternoon volunteer commitment at the local library. This fortuitous timing offered opportunity to retrieve belongings with minimal confrontation, though Jennifer's presence still presented potential complexity given her intermediary role in family dynamics. As I entered through the side garage entrance, Jennifer emerged from the living room with obvious surprise at my appearance. "Olivia, I thought you'd be staying elsewhere until tomorrow. Mom said you'd made other arrangements." "I've come to collect my things," I explained, proceeding directly toward the garbage bag still positioned against the garage wall. "My new apartment is available immediately rather than tomorrow." Jennifer's expression registered momentary confusion followed by understanding. "You're moving today instead? That seems sudden?" The characterization of expedited departure as sudden, despite the obvious hostility demonstrated through garbage bag disposal of my belongings, exemplified Jennifer's persistent minimization of our mother's inappropriate behavior. Throughout our lives, she had consistently normalized treatment that objective assessment would identify as deliberately demeaning or hostile. The property manager offered immediate availability, I explained without elaboration regarding circumstances, that had necessitated expedited transition. It's more practical given everyone's needs. Jennifer watched silently as I gathered garbage bags containing my possessions, making no offer of assistance despite obvious awkwardness of the situation. Her passive observation rather than active intervention represented consistent pattern throughout our relationship. Recognition of inappropriate dynamics without meaningful challenge to established patterns benefiting her interests. "Mom will be surprised you're leaving today," she finally commented as I loaded the last bag into my car. "She expected one more night to discuss arrangements for after your settlement comes through." The statement confirmed my suspicion regarding my mother's intentions for discussion regarding settlement funds. Additional attempt to secure financial assistance for Jennifer, despite my clearly communicated boundaries regarding necessary personal financial recovery. The timing of garbage bag disposal suddenly gained additional strategic dimension beyond mere hostile action. Deliberate attempt to create vulnerable circumstances immediately preceding financial discussion. The funds require processing time. Regardless, I responded neutrally. We can discuss any necessary matters by phone once I'm settled. Jennifer's expression suggested disappointment with this arrangement, though whether regarding missed opportunity for financial discussion or genuine regret regarding circumstances remained unclear. Throughout our adult relationship, distinguishing her authentic perspective from adopted alignment with our mother's position had proven consistently challenging, given her adaptive communication patterns. I should let Mom know you've come for your things, she suggested, reaching for her phone. She might want to talk before you leave. That's unnecessary, I countered firmly. Please tell her I've transitioned to my new apartment effective immediately. I'll contact her once I'm properly settled. Without waiting for response, I completed loading my car with the garbage bags containing my professional materials and personal belongings. The unceremonious departure, retrieving possessions deliberately disposed in trash containers without proper farewell, represented fitting conclusion to residents characterized by persistent diminishment despite extraordinary circumstances. Driving toward my new condominium with car filled with garbage bags containing carefully built professional life felt simultaneously demeaning and liberating. The physical manifestation of disrespect toward possessions that represented extraordinary professional accomplishment contrasted sharply with imminent restoration of career that had withstood catastrophic challenge through deliberate resilience and strategic rebuilding. As I unpacked garbage bags in my new condominium, methodically extracting professional materials from haphazard disposal, my phone displayed notification of substantial deposit. The settlement funds had processed more rapidly than anticipated, arriving one day earlier than Martin's projected timeline. The financial restoration, combined with immediate independent living environment, created profound shift in circumstances within 24-hour period. That evening, I sat on temporary air mattress, surrounded by possessions gradually extracted from garbage bags and restored to appropriate organization. The condominium, despite minimal furnishings and obvious transitional state, represented environment aligned with personal values without constant undermining from misaligned perspectives. For the first time in 8 months, I occupied space that supported rather than hindered professional identity and personal autonomy. The contrast between objective circumstances and family perception created momentary cognitive dissonance before crystallizing essential truth underlying recent experiences. Despite my mother's persistent characterization of my choices as impractical complexity rather than strategic development, those choices had created foundation for extraordinary resilience during catastrophic challenge. The analytical capabilities she had dismissed as overthinking had enabled algorithmic innovation that secured professional opportunity when conventional paths remained inaccessible. The financial discipline she had characterized as unnecessary deprivation had created reserves that sustained partial independence during prolonged crisis. Most significantly, the professional dedication she had consistently framed as unhealthy obsession had developed capabilities that remained valuable despite extraordinary circumstances. Expertise sufficiently distinctive to create opportunity when conventional employment remained inaccessible due to pending investigation. The same characteristics she had persistently criticized had enabled survival and ultimate restoration when her preferred approach would have proven catastrophically inadequate. As I organized professional materials for the following day's obligations, my phone displayed notification of text message from my mother. Jennifer told me you've removed your things without proper discussion. This continues pattern of selfish behavior despite improved circumstances. We need to discuss your obligations to family, given substantial settlement received today. The message confirmed both awareness of settlement processing and intention behind requested discussion attempt to secure financial commitment despite clearly communicated boundaries regarding necessary personal recovery. The characterization of independent decision-making as selfish behavior exemplified persistent framing that had shaped our relationship throughout adulthood. Any prioritization of personal well-being over family demands represented moral failure rather than appropriate boundary establishment. Rather than engaging with this mischaracterization, I composed measured response focused on practical logistics rather than emotional dynamics. I've transitioned to my new apartment effective immediately. The settlement addresses damage already incurred rather than providing excess resources. I need to focus on rebuilding financial stability before considering additional obligations. I'll contact you once properly settled in my new position. After sending this response, I silenced notifications and returned focus to organizing materials for the following day's obligations. Horizon's onboarding process required thorough review of strategic documentation before official commencement the following week, while settlement implementation necessitated careful financial planning to address accumulated obligations from 8 months of professional crisis. The immediate tasks, establishing functional workspace within new environment, preparing for imminent professional responsibilities, implementing strategic financial recovery, represented pragmatic focus that had enabled survival throughout. Extraordinary challenge. The analytical approach my mother had consistently characterized as overthinking had created framework for methodical rebuilding, despite catastrophic circumstances beyond conventional preparation. As midnight approached in my new condominium, I recognized essential truth underlying recent experiences. The characteristics my family had consistently criticized had enabled resurrection of professional identity when conventional approaches would have proven catastrophically inadequate. The analytical capabilities, financial discipline, and professional dedication they had dismissed as unnecessary complexity had created foundation for resilience that transcended ordinary capacity for recovery. My mother had thrown my belongings into garbage bags without realizing those bags contained not merely possessions, but evidence of extraordinary capacity for strategic rebuilding during catastrophic challenge. The algorithm documentation tossed carelessly among sweaters had secured professional opportunity when conventional employment remained inaccessible. The financial records crumpled between casual clothing had enabled methodical resource allocation during prolonged crisis. The professional certificates stuffed among miscellaneous items represented capabilities that remained valuable despite unprecedented circumstances. She had disposed of my belongings in garbage bags with no understanding of what I had built, not just professional credentials or material possessions, but fundamental resilience that transcended ordinary capacity for recovery. The bag she had carelessly filled contained tangible evidence of extraordinary determination that had enabled methodical rebuilding when most professionals would have surrendered to overwhelming circumstances. Tomorrow would begin process of establishing new professional identity built on foundation of demonstrated resilience rather than theoretical capability. The position at Horizon represented not merely employment, but opportunity to implement environmental impact investment strategies, aligned with personal values regarding sustainability. The settlement funds provided not excess resources for distribution, but necessary capital for rebuilding financial stability, systematically diminished through prolonged crisis. Most significantly, the condominium, though sparsely furnished and obviously transitional, represented environment aligned with personal values without constant undermining from fundamentally misaligned perspectives. For the first time in 8 months, I occupied space that supported rather than hindered professional identity and personal autonomy. Despite beginning with air mattress and minimal necessities, this environment provided essential foundation for rebuilding life centered on demonstrated resilience rather than external validation. My mother had thrown my belongings in garbage bags after I lost my job, with no comprehension of what I had built. What she perceived as fragile career dependent on fortunate circumstances had withstood catastrophic challenge through deliberate resilience and strategic rebuilding. What she characterized as impractical complexity had created capacity for extraordinary recovery when conventional approaches would have proven catastrophically inadequate. The garbage bags she had carelessly filled contained evidence of resilience she would likely never comprehend. Tangible manifestation of capacity that had enabled resurrection of professional identity when most would have surrendered to overwhelming circumstances. Tomorrow would begin process of transforming that resilience into foundation for extraordinary achievement beyond conventional understanding or expectation. The first morning in my new condominium dawned with unusual clarity, despite minimal sleep on the temporary air mattress. Sunlight streamed through uncovered floor-to-ceiling windows, illuminating the potential of empty space rather than highlighting its limitations. The sparsely furnished environment, containing only essential items purchased during yesterday's expedited transition, represented not deprivation, but deliberate foundation for methodical rebuilding aligned with personal values rather than external expectations. As I prepared for the day's obligations using basic necessities arranged in the still empty bathroom, I contemplated the extraordinary transition that had occurred within 48 hours. From sleeping in my car to independent living, from financial precarity to substantial settlement implementation, from professional uncertainty to imminent leadership position, the rapid transformation of circumstances provided tangible evidence of resilience that had enabled survival throughout extraordinary challenge. The condominium's open concept layout offered natural separation between living and professional spaces, with the second bedroom ideally configured for home office functionality during transition to Horizon's offices. After organizing basic breakfast, from minimal supplies purchased during yesterday's expedited shopping, I established temporary workspace using packing boxes as improvised desk surface for laptop and essential documentation. The settlement funds, now fully accessible in my account, required strategic allocation to address accumulated obligations from 8 months of professional crisis. The financial planning expertise that had enabled methodical resource management during prolonged uncertainty now provided framework for systematic rebuilding rather than reactive response. Creating comprehensive spreadsheet detailing prioritized obligations, I established sequential implementation plan aligned with long-term financial stability rather than immediate gratification. First priority, securing essential furnishings. Beyond temporary air mattress and makeshift workspace, required balanced approach between immediate functionality and long-term investment. The settlement funds provided capacity for quality purchases, though deliberate restraint remained appropriate given accumulated obligations requiring systematic resolution. Strategic allocation, rather than impulsive acquisition, had enabled survival during crisis and would similarly facilitate sustainable recovery during restoration. 3 hours of methodical research identified appropriate furnishings that balanced quality with value, with delivery scheduled throughout upcoming week to establish proper functionality without unnecessary urgency. The selections, contemporary designs emphasizing clean lines and functional efficiency, reflected personal aesthetic aligned with professional identity rather than external expectations regarding appropriate investment. By midday, essential logistics regarding immediate living environment had been successfully established, allowing attention to shift toward professional transition requirements. Horizon's onboarding documentation required thorough review before official commencement the following Monday, with particular emphasis on integration protocols for the environmental impact investment algorithm I had refined during consulting. Arrangement. As I reviewed technical specifications for algorithm implementation, my phone displayed notification of text message from Jennifer. Mom is upset you left without discussing family obligations given your settlement. She's been talking about everything she's sacrificed while you stayed with her. Could you please call her? Things are tense here with both of us in the house. The message exemplified Jennifer's persistent role within family dynamics, simultaneously acknowledging inappropriate behavior while facilitating continued engagement that enabled such behavior. Throughout our lives, she had consistently served as intermediary, attempting to moderate conflicts created through our mother's unreasonable expectations without establishing meaningful boundaries regarding those expectations. Rather than engaging with this manipulative framing, I composed measured response focused on practical boundaries rather than emotional dynamics. I need to focus on reestablishing professional and financial stability before considering additional obligations. I'll reach out once properly settled in my new position. I hope your transition to the living room space proves comfortable. This response, establishing clear boundaries without unnecessary elaboration, represented deliberate shift from previous communication patterns that had consistently prioritized family harmony over personal well-being. Throughout adulthood, I had maintained extensive patience with unreasonable expectations, despite fundamental misalignment with personal values regarding appropriate reciprocity and boundaries. After sending this response, I returned attention to professional preparation rather than family dynamics, recognizing that successful transition to Horizon's leadership position required focused commitment rather than emotional distraction. The algorithm implementation would establish foundation for environmental impact investment division, aligned with both professional expertise and personal values regarding sustainability, opportunity for meaningful contribution beyond individual advancement. The afternoon proceeded with methodical organization of technical documentation, development of preliminary implementation timeline, and strategic planning for team integration upon official commencement next week. The focused productivity, uninterrupted by household tensions or passive-aggressive disruptions, represented welcome contrast to previous working conditions that had required constant navigation of hostile dynamics, despite professional crisis. By evening, sufficient progress had been achieved to justify exploration of the condominium building's amenities. Features initially considered secondary during property selection focused primarily on location and immediate availability. The rooftop terrace offered unexpected sophistication with comfortable seating areas, landscaped planters, and panoramic views of the city skyline illuminated against darkening sky. As I surveyed this shared space currently unoccupied by other residents, my phone displayed notification of incoming call from my mother. After brief contemplation regarding potential benefits versus likely negative outcomes from such communication, I declined the call and returned to appreciating immediate surroundings rather than engaging with dynamics that would inevitably undermine recent progress toward establishing appropriate boundaries. Within minutes, voicemail notification appeared, followed shortly by text message. Olivia, your continued avoidance demonstrates selfishness despite improved circumstances. Family supported you during difficulty and deserves consideration now that you've received substantial settlement. Jennifer's situation requires immediate assistance that you're clearly able to provide. Call immediately to discuss your obligations. The message exemplified our mother's persistent characterization of boundary establishment as moral failure rather than appropriate self-preservation. Throughout my life, any prioritization of personal well-being over family demands had been framed as selfish behavior rather than necessary balance, creating pattern of obligation disconnected from reciprocity or reasonable expectation. Most striking was the deliberate mischaracterization of support provided during my professional crisis. Accommodation consistently framed as burdensome imposition rather than familial obligation, despite circumstantial necessity beyond personal control. The garbage bag disposal of professional materials represented culminating expression of this perspective rather than isolated incident, demonstrating fundamental assessment of my needs as inherently subordinate regardless of context or circumstances. Rather than engaging with this manipulative framing, I silenced notifications and returned attention to immediate environment. The sophisticated rooftop terrace representing one component of deliberately chosen living arrangement, aligned with personal values rather than external expectations. The settlement funds had enabled immediate transition to independent living, though the condominium itself represented reasonable investment rather than extravagant indulgence. despite my mother's persistent characterization of urban housing as unnecessary luxury. That evening, I returned to my still minimally furnished unit and prepared simple meal using basic supplies purchased during expedited transition. The sparse environment, containing only air mattress, impromptu workspace, and essential necessities, might appear inadequate by conventional standards, yet represented profound improvement over recent circumstances that had included sleeping in my car to avoid increasingly hostile household dynamics. As I reviewed additional onboarding materials on my laptop while eating dinner seated on the floor beside improvised packing box desk, incoming email notification displayed Eliza's address with subject line, "Welcome Package Delivery." The message contained confirmation of courier delivery scheduled for the following morning, without specific details regarding contents beyond official onboarding materials. The thoughtful coordination, ensuring documentation delivery to new address despite expedited transition timeline, exemplified professional consideration that contrasted sharply with recent family dynamics characterized by deliberate diminishment of legitimate needs. Throughout my consulting arrangement, Horizon's team had consistently demonstrated respect for expertise and contribution, regardless of circumstances, providing meaningful validation, absent from family interactions shaped by fundamentally different values regarding achievement and purpose. The following morning began with systematic continuation of settlement fund allocation, with priority payments addressing accumulated obligations from 8 months of professional crisis. The methodical process, executing predetermined strategy, rather than reactive response, represented approach that had enabled survival throughout extraordinary challenge. The analytical capabilities my mother had consistently characterized as overthinking had created framework for resilience when conventional approaches would have proven catastrophically inadequate. By mid-morning, substantial progress had been achieved regarding financial obligations when doorbell announced courier delivery mentioned in Eliza's email. Upon opening the door, I discovered not merely document envelope, but substantial package requiring wheeled cart for transportation, dimensions suggesting contents well beyond standard onboarding materials. Once delivered into my sparsely furnished living room, the package revealed elegant presentation box bearing Horizon's logo. Inside, nested within protective materials, stood sophisticated Dell XPS workstation, dual professional-grade monitors, ergonomic chair, and comprehensive peripherals creating complete professional workspace. Accompanying note from Eliza explained, "Olivia, we understand your transition involves multiple logistics simultaneously. This workstation contains all necessary configurations for algorithm implementation and team integration beginning Monday. The equipment is company-issued, but we expedited delivery to support immediate functionality in your new space. Looking forward to your official commencement." Eliza. The thoughtful provision, anticipating practical challenges of simultaneous, professional and personal transition, demonstrated fundamental respect absent from recent family interactions. Without requiring explanation regarding expedited relocation circumstances, Horizon had proactively addressed practical needs that would facilitate successful integration despite potentially challenging transition logistics. The workstation's specifications exceeded standard corporate provision, with processing capacity specifically calibrated for complex algorithmic modeling required for environmental impact assessment methodologies. The dual monitors featured precision, color calibration essential for data visualization components, while the ergonomic chair provided appropriate support for extended analytical sessions. As I began assembling this unexpected professional workspace within my minimally furnished living environment, doorbell announced additional delivery. This time, furniture purchases scheduled throughout coming week had been expedited without my request. The delivery team arrived with bed frame, mattress, dining table, and office desk scheduled for staggered arrival over several days, explaining the vendor had consolidated shipments for efficiency after noticing multiple orders to same address. This fortuitous timing, providing essential furnishings simultaneous with professional equipment, transformed the condominium from temporary accommodation to functional living environment within single morning. By early afternoon, proper bed had replaced air mattress, dining table had eliminated floor seating, and professional-grade workstation occupied proper desk rather than packing box improvisation. The rapid transformation, from garbage bag disposal to sophisticated functionality within 48 hours, created momentary cognitive dissonance before crystallizing essential truth underlying recent experiences. The resilience developed through methodical response to catastrophic professional challenge had created capacity for extraordinary rebuilding when opportunity finally emerged from prolonged crisis. That afternoon, another unexpected delivery arrived. This time, grocery service bringing comprehensive food supplies beyond basic necessities purchased during expedited transition. The accompanying note revealed Eliza had arranged this additional consideration. Proper nutrition supports. Cognitive performance. Consider this practical onboarding provision rather than personal gesture. Your schedule this weekend likely precludes grocery shopping given implementation preparation requirements. Eliza. The thoughtful provision, addressing practical need. Without requiring explicit acknowledgement of challenging circumstances, demonstrated professional consideration that respected dignity rather than emphasizing limitation. Throughout my consulting arrangement, Horizon's team had consistently recognized contribution without qualification regarding circumstances, providing validation based on demonstrated capability rather than external factors beyond personal control. By evening, my living environment had transformed from emergency accommodation to sophisticated functionality within single day. Proper furnishings, professional workspace, and comprehensive necessities establishing foundation for effective performance despite recent disruption. The rapid reconstruction, enabled by settlement funds and professional consideration, represented tangible manifestation of resilience that had sustained throughout extraordinary challenge. As I prepared proper meal using delivered groceries at actual dining table rather than makeshift arrangement, my phone displayed notification of another text message from Jennifer. Mom's really upset you're ignoring her calls. She's talking about having supported you financially for months without compensation and deserving help with my situation, now that you have settlement money. Could you please just talk to her briefly? Things are getting uncomfortable here. The message highlighted Jennifer's continued facilitation of inappropriate expectations, despite nominal acknowledgement of their unreasonable nature. Throughout our relationship, she had consistently attempted moderation of conflicts created through our mother's demands, without establishing meaningful boundaries regarding the legitimacy of those demands. The claim regarding financial support during my residence represented deliberate mischaracterization of actual arrangements. Throughout 8 months of professional crisis, I had consistently contributed household expenses proportional to limited resources available, including grocery provision, utility payments, and maintenance costs, despite severe financial constraints. The characterization of this arrangement as uncompensated support exemplified persistent framing that diminished legitimate contribution while emphasizing perceived burden. Rather than engaging with this manipulative framing, I composed response focused on factual clarification rather than emotional dynamics. I maintained consistent financial contribution throughout my residence despite severe constraints, including grocery provision, utility payments, and maintenance costs. The settlement addresses damage already incurred rather than providing excess resources. I need to focus on rebuilding financial stability before considering additional obligations. I'll reach out once properly settled in my new position. After sending this factual correction, I returned attention to professional preparation rather than family dynamics, recognizing that successful transition to Horizon's leadership position required focused commitment undistracted by emotional manipulation. The Environmental Impact Investment Division represented opportunity for meaningful contribution aligned with personal values regarding sustainability, purpose beyond individual advancement that warranted dedicated preparation. The following Day, Saturday before official commencement Monday, provided opportunity for comprehensive preparation using professional-grade workstation delivered yesterday. The sophisticated equipment enabled thorough testing of algorithm implementation protocols, identification of potential integration challenges, and development of strategic solutions before official team collaboration began. By midday, substantial progress had been achieved when Doorbell announced unexpected weekend delivery. Upon opening the door, I discovered Eliza herself rather than courier service, holding software documentation and genuine smile that conveyed professional camaraderie, rather than obligatory courtesy. I was reviewing implementation protocols and identified potential database integration issue, she explained as I invited her inside. Seemed more efficient to discuss directly than attempt technical explanation via email, especially given your official start Monday. The personal visit, professional courtesy extended beyond contractual obligation, represented collaborative approach that characterized Horizon's organizational culture. Throughout my consulting arrangement, team members had consistently demonstrated commitment to collective excellence through substantive engagement rather than hierarchical formality or procedural limitation. As Eliza entered my newly furnished condominium, her expression registered momentary surprise at the minimal though functional arrangement before professional focus returned to technical matters requiring attention. For the next 2 hours, we worked collaboratively at the workstation addressing database architecture considerations essential for algorithm implementation, with Eliza providing invaluable institutional knowledge regarding existing systems while respecting my expertise regarding methodology integration. The productive engagement, focused entirely on substantive matters without reference to personal circumstances or living arrangements, demonstrated professional respect fundamentally different from family interactions characterized by persistent judgment regarding choices and priorities. Throughout the technical discussion, Eliza engaged with intellectual substance of implementation challenges rather than superficial appearances or conventional expectations. As our work concluded with comprehensive implementation strategy established, for Monday's official commencement, Eliza prepared to depart before offering observation that acknowledged personal circumstances without inappropriate intrusion. Transitions always involve multiple simultaneous logistics. If implementation timeline requires adjustment given recent relocation, that accommodation is easily arranged. The algorithm quality justifies flexibility regarding initial integration scheduling. The statement, acknowledging potential challenge. Without requiring explicit disclosure or creating obligation, demonstrated emotional intelligence alongside professional respect. Without specific reference to expedited living arrangements or family circumstances, Eliza had provided appropriate space for legitimate adjustment without undermining professional standards or expectations. I appreciate the consideration, I responded sincerely. The implementation timeline remains appropriate despite transition logistics. The workspace provision has been particularly helpful in maintaining productivity during relocation. Eliza nodded with understanding that required no further elaboration. Excellent. The team looks forward to your official integration Monday. The environmental impact methodology you've developed represents significant advance in quantification protocols. Your leadership will accelerate implementation substantially. After Eliza's departure, I continued preparation using insights gained through our collaborative discussion, developing comprehensive implementation strategy that addressed potential integration challenges identified during technical review. The focused productivity, supported by professional-grade equipment within functional environment, represented extraordinary contrast to circumstances just 3 days earlier. Searching through garbage bags for essential materials within hostile household characterized by deliberate undermining of legitimate needs. That evening, as I reviewed final preparation for Monday's official commencement, my phone displayed notification of incoming call from unknown number. Assuming potential professional contact given weekend proximity to Monday transition, I answered, to discover Martin rather than anticipated colleague. Olivia, he began without preamble, I've received concerning communication from your mother regarding the settlement funds. She's claiming entitlement to portion based on support provided during your residence in her home. I wanted to verify whether you've authorized any distribution arrangement I'm unaware of. The revelation that my mother had contacted my attorney directly regarding settlement funds demonstrated escalation beyond inappropriate expectations to active interference with professional matters. The deliberate overreach, attempting to circumvent clear boundaries by involving legal representation, revealed determination to access resources regardless of explicitly communicated limitations or reasonable consideration of actual circumstances. I've authorized no distribution arrangement, I confirmed firmly. The settlement addresses damage already incurred rather than providing excess resources. I maintained consistent financial contribution throughout residence despite severe constraints. Martin's tone conveyed professional concern alongside personal sympathy. I assumed as much but needed confirmation before responding appropriately. Her communication included assertions regarding financial support that seemed inconsistent with circumstances you've described throughout our representation. The characterization is deliberately misleading, I acknowledged. Throughout 8 months of professional crisis, I maintained household contribution proportional to limited resources available, including grocery provision, utility payments, and maintenance costs despite severe financial constraints. Understood, Martin affirmed. I'll respond with appropriate clarification regarding settlement purpose and distribution limitations. The funds represent compensation for demonstrable professional damage rather than discretionary resources available for family distribution. After concluding this conversation, I contemplated implications of my mother's extraordinary overreach. Contacting my attorney directly regarding financial matters explicitly established as personal rather than familial. The deliberate escalation demonstrated determination beyond normal boundary testing, suggesting potential for additional interference requiring proactive rather than reactive response. This concern proved justified when email notification displayed, "Message from Horizon's Human Resources Department with subject line, Employment Verification Request." The message contained professional inquiry regarding recent contact from individual claiming family relationship, who had requested confirmation of compensation package details for financial planning purposes. The deliberate attempt to access professional information through unauthorized channels represented significant boundary violation beyond normal familial overreach. The calculated effort to circumvent explicitly communicated limitations through professional interference demonstrated determination that transcended inappropriate expectations to active undermining of independence recently established through extraordinary resilience during prolonged crisis. After confirming no authorization had been provided for information release, I composed email to Eliza explaining situation without unnecessary personal details. I should make you aware of potential unauthorized information requests regarding my employment arrangements. A family member experiencing financial challenges has demonstrated determination to access details despite clear boundaries. No information should be provided regardless of claimed relationship or stated purpose. I apologize for any inconvenience this may cause during transition. Eliza's response arrived within minutes despite weekend timing. Information security remains fundamental regardless of circumstances. Human Resources has been instructed to direct any inquiries to legal department with clear protocols regarding authorization requirements. This creates no inconvenience whatsoever and requires no apology. We look forward to your official commencement Monday without reservation. The professional response, addressing legitimate concern without unnecessary personal inquiry, demonstrated respect for boundaries that contrasted sharply with family dynamics, characterized by persistent violation of reasonable limitations. Throughout my consulting arrangement, Horizon's team had consistently recognized appropriate separation between professional contribution and personal circumstances, providing validation based on demonstrated capability rather than external factors. beyond individual control. That evening, as I completed final preparation for Monday's official commencement, comprehensive understanding of recent events crystallized with unexpected clarity. The garbage bag disposal of professional materials had represented not isolated incident of frustration, but fundamental expression of assessment regarding the value of career built through deliberate development despite persistent diminishment. My mother had thrown my belongings in trash bags after I lost my job, with no comprehension of what I had built. Not merely professional credentials or material possessions, but fundamental resilience that had enabled extraordinary recovery when conventional capacity would have proven catastrophically inadequate. The analytical capabilities she had consistently characterized as overthinking had created framework for systematic rebuilding during unprecedented challenge. The financial discipline she had dismissed as unnecessary restriction had established foundation for resource management that sustained through prolonged crisis. Most significantly, the professional dedication she had persistently framed as unhealthy obsession had developed expertise sufficiently distinctive to create opportunity when conventional employment remained inaccessible due to circumstances beyond personal control. The same characteristics she had consistently criticized had enabled survival and ultimate restoration, when her preferred approach would have proven fundamentally inadequate given extraordinary challenges encountered. As I surveyed my condominium, transformed from emergency accommodation to sophisticated functionality within 72 hours, tangible evidence of this resilience surrounded me in material form. The professional-grade workstation represented not merely equipment, but validation of expertise that had retained value despite catastrophic circumstances. The proper furnishings, though recently acquired, demonstrated capacity for methodical rebuilding when opportunity finally emerged from prolonged crisis. Most significantly, the environmental impact investment methodology documentation displayed on sophisticated monitors represented intellectual property developed through deliberate application of analytical capabilities consistently dismissed as unnecessary complexity throughout my life. The algorithm that had secured professional opportunity during extraordinary circumstances embodied approach to challenge characterized by systematic response rather than reactive surrender. Precise application of capabilities developed despite rather than because of family influence. Monday morning arrived with unusual clarity despite complex emotions generated through weekend revelations regarding family boundary violations. Professional preparation completed and appropriate responses implemented, I prepared for official commencement at Horizon's offices with confidence grounded in demonstrated resilience rather than theoretical capability. The sophisticated office building housing Horizon's headquarters represented physical manifestation of the firm's innovative approach to environmental impact investment. Contemporary architecture incorporating sustainable design elements throughout public and private spaces. The reception area featured living wall installation alongside digital visualization of current portfolio performance metrics, creating immediate impression of values alignment between quantitative analysis and environmental commitment. Eliza greeted me personally rather than delegating to administrative staff, escorting me through security protocols with collegial conversation focused entirely on implementation strategies rather than personal circumstances or weekend communications regarding unauthorized information requests. The professional focus, engaging with substantive matters rather than peripheral concerns, demonstrated respect that contrasted sharply with recent family interactions, characterized by persistent judgment regarding choices and priorities. The morning proceeded with seamless integration into leadership team through introductory meetings, system access implementation, and strategic planning sessions regarding environmental impact division development. Throughout these interactions, colleagues engaged with intellectual substance of methodology rather than circumstances surrounding its development, providing validation based on demonstrable value rather than contextual considerations. By midday, preliminary implementation of algorithm integration had begun with technical team, creating foundation for the environmental impact assessment protocols that would distinguish Horizon's approach within competitive landscape. The collaborative engagement, focused entirely on substantive advancement rather than procedural limitation, represented professional environment aligned with personal values regarding meaningful contribution beyond individual advancement. As afternoon approached, Eliza invited me to join executive lunch scheduled with potential client representing significant institutional investor focusing on sustainable portfolio development. The inclusion, positioning me as strategic leadership rather than technical implementation, demonstrated confidence beyond formal title or tenure considerations, recognizing expertise as valuable contribution regardless of organizational duration or conventional hierarchy. Throughout the client meeting, Eliza deliberately highlighted my environmental impact methodology as competitive distinction, warranting serious consideration despite numerous alternative investment opportunities. The genuine advocacy, promoting innovation developed during consulting arrangement before official employment commenced, represented professional validation fundamentally different from family interactions consistently characterized by diminishment, regardless of demonstrable achievement. The client engagement concluded with scheduled follow-up to explore specific implementation of sustainable investment strategies using proprietary methodology developed through my analytical framework. The potential partnership, representing substantial portfolio investment focused on environmental impact, created opportunity for meaningful influence beyond financial performance metrics, aligning professional contribution with personal values regarding sustainability and responsibility. As workday concluded with comprehensive integration substantially completed despite first-day status, Eliza invited me to brief debrief session regarding initial impressions and implementation priorities. The collaborative approach, seeking input rather than delivering instruction, demonstrated respect for expertise that contrasted sharply with recent family dynamics, characterized by persistent invalidation of demonstrated capability. The team integration has proceeded more efficiently than anticipated, Eliza observed as we reviewed implementation progress. Your preparation despite transition logistics has accelerated timeline significantly. The methodology documentation demonstrates exceptional thoroughness, unusual for innovation developed under consulting circumstances. The acknowledgement, recognizing quality despite potentially challenging development conditions, provided validation based on demonstrable results rather than contextual considerations. Throughout my consulting arrangement, Horizon's team had consistently evaluated contribution according to substantive value rather than circumstance limitation, creating professional environment that rewarded capability regardless of conventional parameters. As I prepared to depart following this productive first day, Eliza offered observation that acknowledged recent challenges without inappropriate intrusion or unnecessary elaboration. Significant transitions often reveal fundamental truths regarding both professional capabilities and personal resilience. Your navigation of recent circumstances demonstrates exceptional capacity in both dimensions. Horizon values that resilience alongside technical expertise, recognizing their interconnected contribution to meaningful impact. The statement, acknowledging personal challenge without requiring explicit disclosure, demonstrated emotional intelligence alongside professional respect. Without specific reference to family dynamics or living circumstances, Eliza had recognized the extraordinary resilience that had enabled professional restoration despite unprecedented obstacles. Returning to my condominium that evening, I surveyed living space transformed from emergency accommodation to sophisticated functionality within 72 hours. The rapid reconstruction, enabled by settlement funds and professional opportunity, represented tangible manifestation of resilience developed through methodical response to catastrophic challenge rather than surrender to overwhelming circumstances. My mother had thrown my belongings in garbage bags after I lost my job, with no comprehension regarding what I had built. What she perceived as disposable represented foundation for extraordinary recovery, beyond conventional capacity or expectation. What she dismissed as unnecessary complexity had created resilience that enabled resurrection of professional identity when most would have surrendered to overwhelming circumstances. Tomorrow would continue process of transforming that resilience into foundation for meaningful contribution aligned with personal values rather than external validation. The Environmental Impact Investment Division represented opportunity beyond individual advancement, potential for substantial influence regarding sustainability practices through financial incentive structures that rewarded responsible corporate behavior. My phone displayed notification of another text message from Jennifer. Mom tried contacting your lawyer about the settlement money, but he wasn't cooperative. She's really upset and talking about everything she did for you during your difficult time. Could you please just call her briefly? Things are getting really tense here. The message confirmed escalation pattern that had progressed from inappropriate expectations to deliberate interference with professional matters despite explicitly communicated boundaries. The persistent characterization of reasonable limitations as selfish behavior rather than appropriate self-protection demonstrated fundamental misalignment regarding reciprocity and obligation that would require substantial distance rather than continued engagement. Rather than responding to this manipulative framing, I silenced notifications and focused attention on preparation for tomorrow's continued implementation of environmental impact methodology that would distinguish Horizon's approach within competitive landscape. The professional opportunity, aligned with personal values regarding sustainability and responsibility, represented meaningful purpose beyond individual advancement or external validation. My mother had thrown my belongings in garbage bags, with fundamental misunderstanding regarding what those bags contained, not merely possessions but evidence of extraordinary capacity for strategic rebuilding during catastrophic challenge. The algorithm documentation tossed carelessly among sweaters had secured professional opportunity when conventional employment remained inaccessible. The financial records crumpled between casual clothing had enabled methodical resource allocation during prolonged crisis. Most significantly, the professional certificates stuffed among miscellaneous items represented capabilities that remained valuable despite unprecedented circumstances. Expertise developed through deliberate application of analytical abilities consistently dismissed as unnecessary complexity throughout my life. The resilience she had never recognized had enabled extraordinary recovery when conventional capacity would have proven catastrophically inadequate given challenges encountered. Tomorrow would continue transformation of that resilience into foundation for meaningful contribution beyond individual advancement or external validation. The Environmental Impact Investment Division represented opportunity for substantial influence regarding sustainability practices through financial incentive structures that rewarded responsible corporate behavior, purpose aligned with personal values despite rather than because of family influence. My mother had thrown my belongings in garbage bags after I lost my job, with no understanding regarding what I had built. What she perceived as fragile career dependent on fortunate circumstances had withstood catastrophic challenge through deliberate resilience and strategic rebuilding. What she characterized as impractical complexity had created capacity for extraordinary recovery when conventional approaches would have proven fundamentally inadequate. The garbage bags she had carelessly filled contained evidence of resilience. She would likely never comprehend tangible manifestation of capacity that had enabled resurrection of professional identity when most would have surrendered to overwhelming circumstances. Tomorrow would continue process of transforming that resilience into foundation for extraordinary achievement beyond conventional understanding or expectation. 3 months passed with remarkable efficiency following my official commencement at Horizon Impact Partners. The Environmental Investment Division under my leadership had progressed from conceptual framework to operational reality, with implementation timelines exceeding even optimistic projections. The proprietary algorithm for quantifying environmental impact across diverse industrial sectors had been fully integrated into portfolio assessment protocols, creating distinctive methodology that differentiated Horizon's approach within competitive landscape. My professional reemergence had accelerated beyond conventional expectations for someone recovering from catastrophic career disruption. The leadership position initially offered with reasonable compensation had expanded in both scope and recognition, as the Environmental Impact Division demonstrated exceptional performance metrics during initial implementation phase. Institutional investors with sustainability mandates had responded with significant portfolio allocations, recognizing the distinctive quantification methodology as valuable innovation beyond standard environmental, social, and governance (ESG) frameworks prevalent throughout industry. The condominium that had begun as emergency accommodation with air mattress and packing box desk now represented sophisticated living environment aligned with professional identity and personal values. Deliberate furnishing choices emphasizing clean lines and functional aesthetics created space that supported both well-being and productivity without unnecessary extravagance or ostentation. The second bedroom had been transformed into comprehensive home office with ergonomic design elements ensuring comfortable productivity during evening research sessions extending beyond standard office hours. Most significantly, financial stability had been methodically re-established through systematic implementation of recovery strategy developed during settlement allocation planning. The disciplined approach, prioritizing debt resolution, emergency fund restoration, and strategic investment rather than immediate consumption, had created foundation for sustainable security rather than temporary relief. The financial records, once crumpled between casual clothing and garbage bags, now represented orderly documentation of systematic recovery from catastrophic disruption. Throughout this period of professional restoration and personal rebuilding, I had maintained deliberate distance from family dynamics that had previously undermined well-being through persistent diminishment of legitimate achievement and boundary violation regarding personal autonomy. Following the unauthorized attempts to access settlement funds through my attorney and compensation details through Horizon's Human Resources Department, I had implemented comprehensive communication boundaries, limiting interaction to written format that created documentation record while preventing manipulative pressure tactics dependent on immediate response. My mother had continued periodic communication attempts through increasingly dramatic text messages, characterizing appropriate boundaries as selfish abandonment of family obligations. Your continued silence demonstrates complete disregard for family despite financial windfall. Jennifer's landlord increased rent again, and she's struggling to maintain basic necessities while you enjoy luxury apartment and settlement money. As your mother who sacrificed everything for your education, I deserve consideration during retirement years. These messages, consistently mischaracterizing hard-won professional restoration as financial windfall rather than rightful compensation for catastrophic damage, remained unanswered beyond initial factual clarification regarding household contributions during residence and appropriate settlement purpose. The deliberate distance, while initially challenging given lifelong patterns of accommodating unreasonable expectations to maintain family harmony, had created necessary space for professional focus and personal well-being during critical rebuilding period. Jennifer had attempted more measured communication initially, though her messages similarly centered on financial assistance rather than genuine connection or acknowledgement of extraordinary challenges overcome. I understand you're focused on rebuilding right now, but my teaching position had hours reduced this semester, and I'm having trouble covering basic expenses. Could you consider small loan until things stabilize? $3,000 would help tremendously with current challenges. This request, positioned as small loan, despite substantial figure and complete absence of repayment discussion, represented continued pattern of asymmetrical expectation regarding financial support regardless of circumstances. Throughout our adult relationship, Jennifer had consistently expected assistance during her various challenges, while offering none during my comparatively infrequent needs, including complete absence throughout 8 months of professional crisis and subsequent rebuilding. Rather than engaging with these persistent attempts to access financial resources despite explicitly communicated boundaries, I had maintained focused attention on professional responsibilities that had expanded significantly, as Horizon's Environmental Impact Division demonstrated exceptional performance. The institutional investors, initially intrigued by innovative methodology, had committed substantial portfolio allocations following demonstrable results during implementation phase, creating momentum that positioned the division for accelerated growth beyond initial projections. This professional success had received unexpected public recognition when financial industry publications selected our Environmental Impact Quantification Methodology for Innovation Award, highlighting distinctive approaches to sustainable investment. The formal acknowledgement, recognizing intellectual contribution developed during consulting arrangement before official employment commenced, created industry visibility that extended beyond organizational context to broader professional recognition. Following this public recognition, Eliza had called unexpected meeting to discuss division expansion, requiring strategic leadership decisions regarding resource allocation and growth trajectory. The conference room overlooking city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows provided appropriate setting for conversation that would substantially impact professional development beyond initial leadership role. The Environmental Impact Division has exceeded performance projections by significant margin, Eliza began, displaying quarterly metrics on wall-mounted display. Institutional allocations have accelerated beyond capacity of current team structure, creating opportunity for substantial expansion if properly implemented. The data visualization confirmed exceptional performance across multiple assessment categories, portfolio companies demonstrating environmental improvement following investment, financial returns exceeding industry benchmarks for comparable risk profiles, and client satisfaction metrics indicating strong relationship development beyond transactional engagement. The board has approved comprehensive expansion proposal, Eliza continued, transitioning presentation to organizational chart highlighting significant structural development. This includes separate departmental designation with dedicated resources, expanded team allocation, and adjustment to leadership compensation structure reflecting division contribution. The organizational restructuring represented substantial advancement beyond initial position, with Environmental Impact Division elevated from specialized team to departmental designation with corresponding authority regarding strategic direction and resource allocation. The leadership role similarly expanded from divisional director to departmental executive with reporting relationship directly to Eliza rather than intermediate management layer. The compensation adjustment reflects both division performance and leadership contribution, she explained, displaying detailed structure outlining base salary increase, performance incentives, and equity participation substantially exceeding industry standards for comparable positions. The board recognizes the intellectual property contribution represented by the quantification methodology as fundamental competitive advantage warranting appropriate recognition. The comprehensive package, representing extraordinary professional restoration just 11 months after wrongful termination under criminal allegations, created momentary cognitive dissonance before crystallizing essential truth regarding resilience, developed through methodical response to catastrophic challenge. The analytical capabilities my mother had consistently characterized as overthinking had created foundation for innovation, recognized as valuable contribution beyond conventional parameters. The financial discipline she had dismissed as unnecessary. Restriction had established framework for resource management that sustained through prolonged crisis until opportunity for rebuilding emerged from persistent effort. Most significantly, the professional dedication she had persistently framed as unhealthy obsession had developed expertise sufficiently distinctive to create extraordinary opportunity beyond conventional career progression timelines. The same characteristics she had consistently criticized had enabled not merely survival through unprecedented challenge, but exceptional advancement beyond reasonable expectation given circumstances encountered. The recognition is appreciated, I acknowledge sincerely, though the division performance reflects collaborative effort rather than individual contribution. Eliza nodded with understanding beyond conventional modesty. Effective leadership creates environment where collaborative success becomes possible. Your implementation approach emphasized team contribution while providing strategic direction that maintained methodological integrity throughout integration challenges. The observation, recognizing leadership qualities beyond technical expertise, demonstrated professional assessment fundamentally different from family interactions consistently characterized by diminishment, regardless of demonstrable achievement. Throughout my career development, my mother had persistently characterized professional dedication as personality limitation, rather than purposeful commitment, creating framework that interpreted achievement as fortunate circumstance rather than earned outcome through deliberate application of capabilities. The expansion creates opportunity for meaningful impact beyond initial implementation, I observed, focusing on substantive implications rather than personal recognition. The institutional allocations represent substantial capital directed toward environmental improvement through market mechanisms rather than regulatory requirements. Precisely, Eliza confirmed with genuine enthusiasm rarely displayed during conventional business discussions. The methodology you've developed transforms environmental impact from compliance necessity to competitive advantage through quantifiable metrics that reward substantive improvement rather than superficial reporting. This represents potential for systemic influence beyond individual portfolio performance. The acknowledgement, recognizing broader implications beyond organizational context, provided validation regarding purpose that had motivated professional dedication throughout career development, beyond financial compensation or positional advancement. The environmental impact methodology represented contribution aligned with personal values regarding sustainability and responsibility, opportunity for meaningful influence through market mechanisms that shaped corporate behavior through financial incentives. As we concluded discussion regarding implementation timeline for departmental expansion, Eliza offered observation that acknowledged extraordinary trajectory without unnecessary emphasis on circumstances surrounding initial engagement. Your professional progression from consulting arrangement through division leadership to departmental executive represents acceleration beyond conventional timelines. While circumstances creating initial opportunity were unfortunate, your capacity for rebuilding during challenging transition demonstrated qualities that would have eventually produced similar outcomes through different pathway. The statement, recognizing inherent capabilities beyond circumstantial context, provided meaningful perspective regarding resilience developed through methodical response to catastrophic challenge. While wrongful termination and subsequent legal vindication had created distinctive pathway toward current position, the fundamental qualities enabling exceptional performance existed independently from circumstances that had revealed them through extraordinary pressure. Following this transformative meeting, I returned to my office overlooking city skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows, similar to condominium design that had initially attracted during property selection. The visual parallel between professional and personal environments created momentary reflection regarding deliberate alignment established throughout rebuilding process. Spaces designed to support well-being and productivity through thoughtful consideration rather than reactive response or external expectation. As I reviewed implementation requirements for departmental expansion, incoming email notification displayed message from Martin with subject line, "Additional settlement consideration." The unexpected communication from my attorney created momentary concern regarding potential complications with previous resolution before content revealed positive development. Olivia. Following depositions with additional Vanguard employees. During related proceedings, prosecutors discovered evidence of systematic malfeasance beyond your specific case. This has triggered class action consideration with potential supplementary compensation for all affected parties. Given your case served as initial identification mechanism, special consideration designation has been proposed with corresponding allocation adjustment. Please contact my office to discuss details at your convenience. The revelation that my personal experience had potentially created pathway for broader accountability regarding systematic wrongdoing rather than isolated incident provided unexpected validation beyond individual vindication. While personal restoration had been substantially achieved through settlement implementation and professional advancement, the possibility that my resilience during extraordinary challenge might benefit others, similarly affected, represented meaningful outcome beyond individual circumstances. That evening, as I prepared dinner in my well-appointed kitchen using culinary skills developed through recent cooking classes undertaken as personal enrichment beyond professional development, doorbell. Announced unexpected delivery. Upon opening door, I discovered elegantly packaged gift basket with Horizon logo and formal card-bearing signatures from Environmental Impact Division team members. In appreciation for leadership that recognizes contribution beyond hierarchy and creates environment where innovation flourishes through collaborative engagement rather than competitive limitation. Congratulations on well-deserved recognition and departmental designation that will expand meaningful impact beyond initial implementation. The thoughtful acknowledgement, initiated by team members without executive direction or obligatory occasion, provided validation regarding leadership approach developed through deliberate application of values regarding appropriate organizational dynamics. Throughout division development, I had consistently emphasized collaborative engagement that recognized contribution regardless of hierarchical position or conventional parameters, creating an environment that rewarded substantive innovation rather than political positioning or visibility maximization. As I arranged gift basket contents on dining table while reviewing accompanying card signatures, my phone displayed notification of incoming call from unfamiliar number with local area code. Assuming potential professional contact given recent industry recognition, I answered to discover unexpected connection. Ms. Winters, this is Thomas Blackwell from Mapleton Community College. I'm calling regarding potential guest lecture opportunity for our business program, if your schedule might accommodate educational engagement. The request, originating from institution in my mother's community, created momentary hesitation regarding potential manipulation before professional obligations superseded personal concern. Throughout career development, I had consistently recognized importance of educational engagement that expanded professional knowledge beyond conventional limitations through academic partnership and mentorship opportunities. I'd be interested in learning more about the opportunity, I responded professionally. May I ask how you became aware of my work? Your recent recognition in Financial Innovation Quarterly caught attention of our department chair, Thomas explained. The environmental impact quantification methodology represents innovative approach we'd like students to understand, particularly regarding market mechanisms for sustainability implementation beyond regulatory compliance frameworks. The legitimate, academic interest, focused on substantive methodology rather than personal connection, provided reassurance regarding professional rather than manipulative motivation. The publication recognition had apparently created visibility beyond investment community to educational institutions seeking contemporary perspectives regarding sustainable finance implementations. I'd be happy to discuss potential engagement, I confirmed. Please send detailed information regarding expectations and scheduling parameters to my professional email. After providing appropriate contact information and concluding conversation, I contemplated implications of potential engagement within community containing complicated family dynamics currently maintained at deliberate distance. While professional, opportunity warranted consideration regardless of geographic location. The possibility of encountering family members during such engagement created legitimate concern regarding boundary maintenance during critical professional development period. This concern manifested concretely the following morning through text message from Jennifer displaying unexpected awareness regarding potential local appearance. I heard from Mom's neighbor who works at the community college that you might be giving presentation there soon. Are you coming to town without telling family? Mom would be really hurt if you visited without seeing her after everything she did for you. The message confirmed suspicion regarding community information networks, while demonstrating continued mischaracterization of appropriate boundaries as deliberate injury rather than necessary self-protection. The persistent framing of my mother as generous benefactor after everything she did for you, rather than participant in mutual relationship with corresponding obligations, represented fundamental disconnect regarding actual dynamics during residence, necessitated by extraordinary circumstances beyond personal control. Rather than engaging with this manipulative framing, I composed measured response focused on professional clarification rather than personal dynamics. I received preliminary inquiry regarding potential guest lecture opportunity, but have made no commitments regarding scheduling or format. Any professional engagements would be structured around departmental responsibilities, which currently involve substantial time constraints. This response, acknowledging basic information without unnecessary elaboration, maintained appropriate boundaries regarding personal decisions while preventing manipulation through incomplete information or deliberate misinterpretation. Throughout recent months, I had developed communication approach that provided factual clarity without emotional engagement, that enabled established patterns of obligation disconnected from reciprocity or reasonable expectation. Jennifer's immediate response demonstrated typical pattern of initial acknowledgement, followed by inevitable pivot toward financial assistance. That makes sense with your busy schedule. Speaking of which, I've been meaning to ask about that loan we discussed a while back. My hours got cut again, and I'm really struggling with basic expenses. Even $2,000 would help tremendously until things stabilize. The reduction in requested amount from $3,000 in previous communication to $2,000 currently represented tactical adjustment rather than substantive reconsideration of appropriate boundaries or legitimate needs assessment. Throughout our adult relationship, Jennifer had consistently approached financial challenges through external assistance rather than structural adjustment regarding lifestyle alignment with actual resources available. Rather than engaging with this persistent attempt to access financial resources despite explicitly communicated boundaries, I returned focus to professional responsibilities that had expanded significantly following departmental designation and leadership advancement. The implementation requirements for organizational restructuring required comprehensive planning regarding resource allocation, team expansion, and strategic integration within broader institutional framework. That afternoon, scheduled meeting with Horizon's executive committee regarding departmental expansion provided welcome opportunity to focus on substantive development rather than persistent boundary testing from family dynamics maintained at deliberate distance. The boardroom setting, sophisticated environment designed for strategic discussion rather than operational details, established appropriate context for conversation regarding significant organizational evolution. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.